You're firing me for helping an old woman?
Olivia Brooks, a young black waitress still dripping rainwater onto the floor, stared at her manager in disbelief. Derek Swanson didn't even flinch. He looked her up and down, slow, like he was inspecting something that disappointed him.
You walked off my floor, middle of a shift, to play hero.
He almost laughed.
Sweetheart, I knew hiring you was a mistake. Should have trusted my gut. You walked off my floor, middle of a shift, to play hero. It's not my problem. Apron. Now.
3 customers watched from the corner booth. Not one of them spoke up. Olivia had just saved a stranger's life, and this was what she got. But that stranger? She had a son. A son with 200 hotels, a private jet, and a very, very short temper. And someone had just told him everything. Yo, firing a black woman for saving a life? You think that's crazy? Nah. Let me take you back to where it all started. But before we get to that satisfying moment, and trust me, it's coming, you need to understand something first. You need to know who Olivia Brooks really was, and what she'd already been through before that night even started. Because this story doesn't hit the same without it. Olivia was 28 years old. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Fraser, one of those Memphis neighborhoods where the houses lean a little and the streetlights flicker more than they shine. The apartment was small. Real small. Her niece Nyla slept on a pull-out couch in the living room. Olivia took the bedroom, but most nights she'd fall asleep on the floor next to Nyla anyway. The girl had nightmares sometimes. Olivia never wanted her waking up alone. Nyla was 6, bright eyes, big imagination. She called Olivia Mama, even though Olivia was technically her aunt. Olivia's older sister had passed 3 years ago. No warning. Just a phone call in the middle of the night and a world that split in half. Olivia was 25, barely surviving on her own, and suddenly she was raising a child. She dropped out of culinary school that same month. Not because she wanted to, because she had to. Bills don't wait for grief. Rent doesn't care that your sister just died. And a 6-year-old needs breakfast in the morning, whether you slept or not. So Olivia did what she always did. She figured it out. She picked up shifts at the Briar Patch, a faded southern diner on the east side of Memphis. The kind of place with cracked vinyl booths, a neon sign missing 2 letters, and regulars who'd been coming since before Olivia was born. The tips were small. The hours were long. The air conditioning hadn't worked right in 3 summers. But Olivia showed up every single day. She knew every regular's order by heart. She refilled coffee before anyone had to ask. She remembered birthdays, asked about grandchildren, and once spent her whole break helping an elderly man read the menu because he'd forgotten his glasses. That was just who she was. But here's what people didn't see. Every morning, before Nyla woke up, Olivia sat at the kitchen table and did the math. Rent, electric, water, bus fare, groceries, Nyla's school lunch account. Every month, the numbers came up short. Not by a lot, just by enough to keep her up at night. This month, it was $200. Last month, it was $180. The month before that, she'd had to choose between the electric bill and new shoes for Nyla. She chose the shoes. She sat in the dark that night and told Nyla they were camping indoors. Nyla thought it was the greatest adventure of her life. Olivia cried after she fell asleep. There was a stack of envelopes on the counter that Olivia had stopped opening. Overdue notices. A letter from Nyla's school about an unpaid field trip fee. A reminder from the clinic about a dental appointment she couldn't afford. She kept them in a neat pile, as if organizing them made them less terrifying. And then there was the notebook. A small spiral notebook with a water-stained cover and pages filled edge to edge with Olivia's handwriting. Recipes. Not copied from the internet. Not borrowed from cookbooks. Hers. Peach cobbler with brown butter and vanilla bean. Honey cornbread with smoked paprika. braised short ribs with a coffee and molasses glaze. Next to each recipe, little notes in the margins. Mrs. Coleman says add more butter. Nyla says this one tastes like Sunday. Customer at table 6 said this was the best thing he'd eaten in Memphis. Remember this one. That notebook was Olivia's dream in physical form. She wanted to open her own place someday. Nothing fancy, just a small cafe or a food truck. Somewhere she could cook her own food for people who needed a good meal and a warm seat. She carried the notebook in her apron pocket every shift, like a good luck charm, like a promise she'd made to herself that she wasn't ready to break yet. Every morning, she made Nyla breakfast before the sun came up. This particular morning, the morning before everything changed, Nyla asked for pancakes. Olivia looked in the cabinet. Half a bag of flour, 2 eggs, a little bit of milk. She mixed the batter, heated the pan, and poured 1 pancake shaped like a star. Nyla's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Mama, it's a star!" "That's right, baby, because that's what you are." They ate together at the tiny kitchen table. Nyla talked about a drawing she was making at school, a house with a big kitchen and a garden. Olivia listened and smiled, and didn't mention that she was $200 short on rent. After breakfast, Olivia walked Nyla to Mrs. Coleman's place, 3 doors down. Mrs. Coleman was 71, retired, and watched Nyla for free. In return, Olivia brought her leftovers from the diner every night. That was their deal. No money, just kindness exchanging hands. Then Olivia caught the bus to work. She sat in the back, notebook in her lap, watching Memphis roll by through a smudged window. She was tired. She was broke. She was 1 bad week away from losing everything. But she showed up. She always showed up. Now, what Olivia didn't know was that this shift, this one ordinary Tuesday night, was going to be anything but ordinary. And the woman who was about to walk through that diner door, she was going to change Olivia's life forever. But not before Olivia changed hers first. That evening, the sky turned ugly. Not just dark, angry. The kind of clouds that roll in low and heavy like they're carrying a grudge. By 6 o'clock, the rain was coming down sideways. Thunder rattled the diner windows every few minutes. The parking lot turned into a shallow lake. The briar patch was almost empty. 2 regulars sat in the corner booth, nursing coffee and watching the storm like it was television. Janelle, Olivia's coworker and closest friend, was wiping down tables and humming something gospel under her breath. Derek was in the back office, with the door closed, watching a game on his phone. Olivia stood behind the counter, folding napkins, trying not to think about the $200 she didn't have. It was going to be a slow night, a nothing night, or so she thought. At 7:14 p.m., the front door swung open, and a woman stumbled in like the storm had chewed her up and spit her out. She was white, early 80s, small-framed, thin silver hair plastered to her forehead. She wore a camel-colored coat that probably cost more than Olivia's monthly rent, but right now it was soaked through and streaked with mud. One of her shoes was half off. Her handbag was clutched to her chest like a lifeline. She stood in the doorway, blinking under the fluorescent lights, looking around the room like she wasn't sure where she was or how she got there. Nobody moved. The 2 regulars glanced over, then looked away. Janelle paused mid-wipe, but didn't step forward. Olivia was already walking toward her. "Ma'am? Hey, are you okay? Come on, let me help you." She took the woman's arm, gently, the way you'd guide someone across ice. She walked her to the booth closest to the kitchen, the warmest spot in the whole restaurant, right next to the heating vent. "Sit right here. I got you." The woman sat down. Her hands were trembling, not just shaking, trembling. Her lips had a faint blue tint. Her breathing was shallow and uneven. Olivia grabbed a clean dish towel from behind the counter and brought it back. She dabbed the woman's face, her hair, her hands. Then she went straight to the kitchen and made a cup of hot tea. No one asked her to. Nobody told her to. She just did it. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Olivia asked, sliding into the booth across from her. The woman's voice came out thin, almost a whisper. "Eleanor. Eleanor Caldwell." "Miss Eleanor? I'm Olivia. You're safe now, okay? Can you tell me what happened?" Eleanor's story came out in broken pieces. She was visiting Memphis, staying somewhere nearby. A house, she said, her son's place. But she'd gone for a short walk before dinner and gotten turned around. The storm came fast. She couldn't find her way back. Her phone was dead. She'd been walking for almost 40 minutes in the rain before she saw the diner's sign. "My son," she kept saying. "My son is going to worry. He worries too much." Olivia squeezed her hand. "We're gonna figure it out. No rush. Just breathe for me." But then, something shifted. Eleanor's face changed. The color drained out of it, what little color was left. She pressed a hand to her chest. Her breathing got tighter, faster. Not panic. Something worse. "My medication," she whispered. I was supposed to take it at 6. My heart. I have a condition." Olivia's stomach dropped. Okay, Miss Eleanor. Do you have your pills with you?" Eleanor pointed to her handbag with a shaking finger. "In there, I think. I can't. My hands." Olivia opened the soaked leather bag. Inside was a mess. A waterlogged wallet, tissues, a monogrammed handkerchief with the initials EC, a set of reading glasses, and, at the very bottom, a small silver pill case. But something else fell out too. A business card. Thick, cream-colored, embossed with dark gold lettering. Caldwell Enterprises. Olivia picked it up, barely glanced at it, and slipped it back into the bag. She didn't recognize the name. Didn't think about it twice. She had bigger problems right now. She found the pill case, popped open the compartment marked PM, and handed Eleanor 2 small tablets. Eleanor took them with a sip of tea. Her hands were shaking so badly the cup rattled against her teeth. Olivia held the cup for her. "There you go, nice and slow. You're doing great." But Eleanor wasn't doing great. Her breathing didn't steady. Her skin was clammy. A thin layer of sweat appeared across her forehead even though she'd been freezing a minute ago. This wasn't getting better. This was getting worse. And what Olivia did next, the decision she made in the next 60 seconds, was going to cost her everything. Her job, her income, her safety net. All of it. Gone. Olivia didn't hesitate, not even for a second. She grabbed the diner's landline from behind the counter and dialed 911. The dispatcher picked up on the 3rd ring. "Memphis 911, what's your emergency?" "I've got an elderly woman here, heart condition. She missed her medication and she's not looking good. I need an ambulance at the Briar Patch on Summer Avenue." The dispatcher paused. Olivia could hear the clicking of a keyboard. "Ma'am, we're dealing with heavy flooding across the east side tonight. Emergency vehicles are backed up. I can dispatch one to you, but current wait time is approximately 40 to 45 minutes. 45 minutes. Olivia looked at Eleanor. Her eyes were half closed. Her lips were turning a deeper shade of blue. Her chest rose and fell in short, shallow bursts like every breath cost her something. 45 minutes might as well have been 45 hours. "Okay, thank you." Olivia hung up. She stood there for exactly 3 seconds. Then she moved. "Janelle!" Janelle looked up from the counter. "I need you to cover my section, all of it. I'm taking her to the hospital myself." Janelle's eyes went wide. "Liv, are you serious? In this storm? She can't wait. Look at her." Janelle looked. She didn't argue. Olivia went to Eleanor's booth and crouched down beside her. She put her hand on the old woman's shoulder. Calm. Steady. The same voice she used when Nyla had a nightmare. Miss Eleanor, I'm going to take you to the hospital, okay? My car's right outside. It's not far. I'm going to be with you the whole time. Eleanor looked at her, those pale blue eyes, watery and scared. You don't have to do this, dear. Yes, I do. Can you stand? Eleanor nodded. Barely. Olivia wrapped her arm around Eleanor's back and helped her to her feet. Eleanor weighed almost nothing, like holding a bird. Olivia grabbed her soaked handbag with her free hand and started walking toward the door. That's when Derek appeared. He came out of the back office like he'd smelled trouble. He stood between Olivia and the front door, arms crossed, blocking the path. Where do you think you're going? Regional Medical. She needs a hospital, Derek. The ambulance is 45 minutes out. Derek looked at Eleanor, then back at Olivia. His expression didn't change. Not concern, not sympathy. Annoyance. You're on the clock, Brooks. I know. You walk out that door, you're done. I'm not playing with you. Olivia stared at him. Eleanor was leaning against her side, trembling, barely standing. Her breathing sounded like paper tearing. Every reason to stay. Every logical, practical, self-preserving reason to stay. This job was all she had. The only thing between her and eviction. Between Nyla and hunger. She looked at Derek. She looked at Eleanor. And then Olivia Brooks did what Olivia Brooks always did. She chose the person who needed her. Then I guess I'm done. She walked past him, pushed through the front door, stepped into the storm. Her car was a disaster, a 15-year-old sedan with a cracked windshield, a passenger door that stuck, and a check engine light that had been on so long Olivia had stopped seeing it. She'd parked it at the far end of the lot because Derek didn't like employees parking near the entrance. She half-carried Eleanor across the flooded parking lot. Rain hammered them both. Olivia's shoes filled with water. She yanked the passenger door open. It stuck. She yanked harder and eased Eleanor into the seat. She ran around to the driver's side, got in, turned the key. The engine coughed. Come on, come on. It caught. The car rumbled to life. Olivia pulled out of the lot and into the storm. The streets were bad. Real bad. Water was running across the road in sheets. Intersections were flooded knee-deep. The wipers were on full speed and still couldn't keep up. Every few seconds, lightning cracked the sky open, and Olivia could see the road for one bright instant before the dark swallowed it again. She drove with both hands on the wheel, leaning forward, squinting through the windshield. Eleanor was in the back seat. Olivia had moved her there so she could lie down. She'd balled up her own jacket and put it behind Eleanor's head as a pillow. Miss Eleanor, talk to me. Stay with me, okay? Eleanor's voice came from the back seat, small, fragile. I'm here, sweetheart. Good. Keep talking. Tell me about your son, the one who worries too much. A pause, then soft. Grant. His name is Grant. He's a good boy. Stubborn. Works too hard, but a good boy. He sounds like someone I know. Olivia smiled, even though Eleanor couldn't see it. I'm stubborn too. Ask anyone. She kept talking, not about the emergency, not about the rain or the roads or the fear sitting in her chest like a stone. She talked about Nyla, about how she makes star-shaped pancakes on Saturday mornings, about how Memphis smells after rain, wet concrete and magnolias, about her peach cobbler recipe, the one a customer once told her was the best thing he'd ever eaten. She talked because silence was dangerous, because silence would let Eleanor drift, and drifting was not an option. That cobbler, Eleanor whispered. You'll have to make it for me sometime. Deal.
but you gotta stay awake for it. That's the rule. That's a hard bargain, dear. I'm a hard woman, Miss Eleanor. Regional Medical Center, 11 minutes from the diner. It felt like an hour. Olivia pulled up to the ER entrance, threw the car into park, and ran around to the passenger's side. She helped Eleanor out and through the sliding glass doors. Inside was bright and loud and chaotic. The storm had filled the ER with a dozen other emergencies, but Olivia cut through the noise. She got Eleanor to the triage desk, explained the situation: heart condition, missed medication, exposure to cold and rain, and stayed right there beside her while the nurses took over.
They put Eleanor in a wheelchair, started vitals, hooked up a monitor. The whole time, Eleanor held Olivia's hand, wouldn't let go. "Thank you," Eleanor said. Her voice was barely there. "You didn't have to do this." Olivia squeezed her fingers. "Yes, I did." An hour later, the doctor came out. Eleanor had experienced an early-stage cardiac episode. Without her medication, combined with the cold, the stress, the physical exertion, it could have turned critical within the hour. Olivia had gotten her there, just in time. She sat in the ER waiting room on a hard plastic chair, still in her damp uniform, still wearing her apron. She looked down at her phone. 2 missed calls from Janelle, 1 text message. "Derek's furious. He already called someone in to replace you. I'm sorry, Liv." Olivia stared at the screen for a long time. Then she put the phone back in her pocket. She didn't leave. Above her head, bolted to the waiting room wall, there was a brass donor plaque. A list of names and foundations that had funded the hospital wing. Third from the top, in polished letters, the Caldwell Family Foundation, founding benefactor. Olivia was sitting directly beneath it. She never looked up. Nah, stop. Stop! She just got fired for saving a life. Like, imagine that's you. Broke, kid at home, and you're sitting in some hospital for a stranger. Would you have done that? Be honest. By the time Olivia got home, it was past 2 in the morning. The apartment was dark. Mrs. Coleman was asleep on the couch, with Nyla curled up beside her, one arm wrapped around a stuffed rabbit that had lost most of its stuffing years ago. Olivia stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching them breathe. Then she pulled a blanket from the closet, covered them both, and sat down at the kitchen table. The stack of bills was right where she'd left it: the overdue electric notice, the letter from Nyla's school, the clinic reminder. She added one more thing to the pile. Nothing. Because that's what she had now. No job, no next paycheck, no plan. She didn't cry. She pulled out a notepad and started a list. Places to apply. Call about school lunch program. Return library books. Check if Dollar General is hiring. That was Olivia. The world falls apart, and she makes a list. 2 days passed. Olivia applied at 4 restaurants, a fast food chain, and a grocery store deli. 2 weren't hiring. 1 said they'd call back. They didn't. The worst part? Word had already spread. Memphis food service is a small world. Everybody knows everybody. And Derek Swanson had made sure people heard his version of the story. Olivia Brooks walked out in the middle of a shift. Unreliable. Unprofessional. He didn't mention the old woman. He didn't mention the storm. He didn't mention the part where Olivia saved someone's life. Just, she walked out. One manager actually said it to her face. "Swanson over at Briar Patch said you abandoned your shift. I can't take that risk." Olivia nodded, thanked him, walked out. She kept going. On the 3rd day, her phone rang. A woman from the hospital's social work department. Polite, professional. "Ms. Brooks, I'm calling on behalf of a patient, Eleanor Caldwell. She's been asking about you. She'd like to thank you personally, and she's left something for you here at the hospital. An envelope." "An envelope?" "Yes, ma'am. It contains $2,000. Olivia went quiet. $2,000. That was rent. That was the electric bill. That was Nyla's field trip and the dental appointment, and maybe a little breathing room for the first time in months. $2,000 would fix everything. She closed her eyes. Tell her I said thank you. Really. But I can't accept it. The social worker paused. Are you sure, Miss Brooks? I'm sure. She doesn't owe me anything. I did what anyone should have done. She hung up. Janelle called 20 minutes later. Girl, you turned down $2,000? It didn't feel right, Janelle. Didn't feel... Liv, you're behind on rent. I know. You're eating cereal for dinner. I know. And you said no to $2,000 from a sweet old lady who literally wants to give it to you. Olivia was quiet for a second. She was scared and alone, Janelle. I didn't help her for money. Taking it would make it feel like I did. Janelle sighed. The kind of sigh that means, I love you, but you're insane. You're a better person than me, Liv. I hope you know that. But there was something else. The social worker mentioned that Eleanor had also left a note, handwritten, on thick, cream-colored stationery. The letterhead read, Caldwell Enterprises. Olivia picked it up the next day. She sat on a bench outside the hospital and read it. Dear Olivia, you reminded me that goodness doesn't ask for permission. I'll never forget what you did. My son will hear about you. With love, Eleanor. Olivia smiled. She folded the note carefully and slipped it into her recipe notebook, right between the peach cobbler and the honey cornbread. She figured Eleanor's son was probably some local businessman, maybe owned a car dealership or a few rental properties. She didn't Google the name. She didn't think about it again. But she should have. Because Eleanor's son wasn't some local businessman, and he had just read a very different version of that same story. Meanwhile, 30 miles east of that hospital bench, a phone rang inside a gated estate overlooking the Mississippi River. The house was massive, stone and glass, the kind of property that doesn't show up on Google Maps because the people who live there pay for it not to. The man who answered the phone was sitting in a leather chair, reviewing blueprints for a $200 million development project. His name was Grant Caldwell, and his mother was on the line. She drove me through the flood, Grant, in a car that barely ran. The windshield was cracked, the door stuck, and she never once looked scared. Not in front of me, at least. Grant listened. He didn't interrupt. He never interrupted his mother. Eleanor told him everything. The storm. The diner. The waitress who sat with her and held her tea because her hands were shaking too badly. The pills. The drive. The hospital. And then the part that made Grant go still. She got fired for it. Her manager fired her on the spot, right in front of everyone. And she walked out anyway. She chose me over her job, Grant, a complete stranger. Silence. And the money? Grant asked. She refused it, every penny. Said she didn't do it for money. Grant leaned back in his chair. He ran his hand across his jaw. Grant Caldwell was not a sentimental man. He'd built a hospitality empire from a single boutique hotel in Nashville to over 200 properties across the Southeast. He made decisions with spreadsheets, not feelings. He negotiated with precision. He didn't do charity. He did strategy. But his mother was his one blind spot, his one weakness. And 2 nights ago, when she went missing during the storm, when he couldn't reach her phone, when his security team spent an hour combing the streets, he'd felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Real fear. And now he was learning that while his people were still searching, a waitress making $8 an hour had already found her, had already saved her, had already given up everything she had to do it. What was the name of that restaurant? Grant asked. The Briar Patch, on Summer Avenue. And the waitress? Olivia Brooks. Grant was quiet for 5 seconds. Then he picked up his second phone and called his assistant. "I need you to find out everything about a woman named Olivia Brooks. Memphis, late 20s, worked at a place called the Briar Patch. And get me the name of the manager there." His voice was calm. But if you knew Grant Caldwell, if you really knew him, you'd know that calm was the most dangerous thing about him. 4 days after Olivia Brooks was fired, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up outside the Briar Patch. Then a second one. Then a third. The engines idled. Nobody got out right away. The lunch crowd inside the diner, maybe a dozen people, didn't notice. Derek Swanson was behind the counter, arguing with a supplier on the phone about the price of napkins. Then the door of the middle SUV opened, and Grant Caldwell stepped out. He didn't look like a billionaire. Not in the way people imagine. No flashy suit, no gold watch catching the light. He wore a dark navy overcoat, simple, clean, expensive if you knew what to look for, invisible if you didn't. But there was something about the way he moved, the way the two men who flanked him, not bodyguards exactly, more like senior associates, adjusted their pace to match his. The way he looked at the diner's flickering sign for a moment, then walked through the door like he already owned the building. Every head in the restaurant turned. Derek hung up the phone mid-sentence. Grant walked straight to the counter. He didn't sit down. He didn't look at the menu. He looked at Derek. "Are you the manager here?" Derek straightened up. Something in his gut told him to be careful. "Yeah, Derek Swanson. What can I do for you?" "My name is Grant Caldwell. I'm the CEO of Caldwell Enterprises." The name hit Derek like a slap. Caldwell Enterprises had been all over the Memphis news for months. The River Bluff Project, a massive mixed-use development on the riverfront. Hotels, restaurants, event spaces, hundreds of millions of dollars flowing into the city. Every small business owner in Memphis had been talking about it. Every restaurant hoping to get a piece of it, including Derek. He'd even sent an inquiry email 3 weeks ago. "Mr. Caldwell," Derek said. His voice shifted, softer, smoother, the voice he used for health inspectors and corporate visitors. "It's an honor to meet you, sir. What brings you to—" "4 nights ago," Grant said, cutting him off, "an elderly woman walked into this restaurant during a storm. She was disoriented. She was in medical distress. She has a heart condition." Derek's mouth opened, then closed. "One of your waitresses helped her. She found her medication. She called 911. When the ambulance couldn't come, she drove that woman to the hospital herself, in a rainstorm, in her own car." Grant paused. "And you fired her for it." The diner went dead silent. Forks stopped moving. Coffee cups froze halfway to mouths. 12 people were watching, and every single one of them was holding their breath. Derek stammered. "Sir, there's more to the story. She walked off during her shift. It's policy. I can't just let employees—" "Your policy," Grant said, "is to fire someone for saving a life." It wasn't a question. Derek tried again. "Look, I didn't know who that woman was. I didn't know she was—" "My mother." 2 words. Quiet. Final. Derek's face went white. "That woman, the random lady off the street, I believe you called her, is my mother. Eleanor Caldwell. She's 82 years old. She has a heart condition, and she would have died in your parking lot if it weren't for the waitress you fired." Derek opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "My company is currently evaluating local restaurant partnerships for the River Bluff project," Grant continued. "The Briar Patch was on our shortlist." He let that sit for a second. "It isn't anymore." Derek looked like a man watching his own house burn down. But Grant wasn't finished. He didn't just leave. He didn't just drive away in his black SUV and go back to his gated estate. What he did next was something no one expected. He went looking for Olivia. Not his assistant, not his security team. Him. He drove through Fraser, walked into the barber shop on the corner, talked to the old man sweeping the steps. "You know an Olivia Brooks?" The barber put down his broom. "Olivia? Of course I know Olivia. She brings me a plate every Sunday after church. Best peach cobbler in Memphis. Why? She in trouble?" "No, sir. Opposite." He went to Mrs. Coleman's door. The old woman eyed him through the screen with deep suspicion. "Who are you, and what do you want with Olivia?" He explained. Mrs. Coleman listened. Then her eyes got wide and wet. "That girl is the best person I know, and nobody gives her the credit she deserves." He talked to Pastor Timothy Moore at the neighborhood church. The pastor said the same thing everyone else said. Olivia is the first one to show up and the last one to ask for help. She tutors kids. She brings meals to elderly neighbors. She never complains. Every single person told the same story. The next morning, Grant Caldwell pulled up outside Olivia's apartment in Fraser. He knocked on the door. Olivia opened it. She was wearing an old college sweatshirt and jeans. Her hair was pulled back. She looked tired. Behind her, Nyla peeked out from behind her legs. "Ms. Brooks," Grant said, "my name is Grant Caldwell. You saved my mother's life last week. I'd like to talk if you have a few minutes." Olivia stared at him. Caldwell. The business card in Eleanor's bag, the letterhead on the note, the name she'd never bothered to look up. It all connected. Right there, on her doorstep. Like a circuit finally closing. She stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment was tiny, clean, warm. Nyla's drawings were taped to the refrigerator. A stack of bills sat on the kitchen table. The recipe notebook lay open next to them. Nyla walked up to Grant and held out a plastic cup with cartoon characters on it. "You want some water?" Grant took it. He drank the whole thing. Grant Caldwell sat at Olivia's kitchen table. Let that sink in for a second. A man worth billions, sitting on a wobbly chair in a one-bedroom apartment in Fraser, drinking water from a cartoon cup, and looking completely comfortable doing it. But what he said next? That's the part that changed everything. "Ms. Brooks, I'm going to be straightforward with you." Olivia sat across from him. Nyla was at the other end of the table, drawing. Quiet, listening in the way kids do, pretending not to, but catching every word. "My company is developing a project on the Memphis riverfront. It's called the River Bluff Project. Hotels, event spaces, and 6 restaurant concepts. We've been looking for the right people to fill those restaurants, not just chefs. People who understand food and people. People who make strangers feel like they belong." He paused. "My mother told me I already found one." Olivia didn't move. She barely blinked. "I'm sorry. What?" "She kept your note, by the way. The one you left at the hospital. She read it to me over the phone. Twice." Grant leaned forward slightly. "You told her about a peach cobbler recipe that could... what were the words? Make a stranger feel like family." Olivia felt her throat tighten. She remembered saying that. Sitting in Eleanor's hospital room, trying to keep her talking, keep her present. She'd said it without thinking. The way you say things when you're just trying to fill silence with something warm. She didn't know anyone was going to remember it. "That's exactly what I want in this project," Grant said. "Not a brand, not a concept designed by a marketing team. Something real, something with a soul." Then he laid it out, piece by piece, specific, clear, no fluff. First, a full culinary scholarship. Olivia had dropped out of culinary school 3 years ago when her sister died. Grant knew this. His team had done their homework. He was offering to pay for her to finish her degree at the Memphis Culinary Institute. Every dollar. Tuition, books, fees, all of it. Funded through the Caldwell Foundation. Second, a restaurant space at the River Bluff Project. Not a job in someone else's kitchen. Her own space. Her own menu. Her own name on the door. The first 2 years would be rent-free, and she'd be paired with an experienced restaurateur as a mentor to help her navigate the business side. Third, and this was the part that made Olivia's hands start shaking, an immediate living stipend. Enough to cover rent, utilities, groceries, and Nyla's expenses while Olivia was in school. Starting now. Starting today. You won't have to choose between learning and surviving, Grant said. That's not a choice anyone should have to make. Olivia sat very still. She didn't scream. She didn't jump up. She didn't throw her arms around him. That's not who she was. She looked at Nyla, drawing at the other end of the table, purple crayon in her fist, tongue poking out the side of her mouth in concentration. She looked at the stack of bills, the overdue electric notice on top. She looked at the recipe notebook, sitting right there, open, pages filled with her handwriting, her dreams in ink. Her voice came out quiet, a little cracked, but steady. You're serious? Grant nodded, dead serious. Why me? She looked at him straight. No games, no false modesty. A real question. There are 100 chefs in this city with degrees and experience and resumes that would make mine look like a napkin sketch. Grant almost smiled. There are. But none of them drove my 82-year-old mother through a flood in a car with a cracked windshield. He paused. Talent I can find anywhere, Ms. Brooks. I can train talent. I can develop talent. But character, like yours, the kind that makes you give up your only paycheck for a stranger, I can't teach that. Nobody can. Olivia looked down at the table. She pressed her lips together, hard. Her eyes were shining, but she didn't let a single tear fall. Not yet. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. I mean, can I think about it for like 10 seconds? Grant laughed, a real laugh. The first one Olivia had heard from him. Yes. She breathed in. She breathed out. Okay. Yes. I'm in. And then came the moment that broke the whole room open. Nyla, who had been drawing quietly this entire time, who everyone assumed wasn't listening, looked up from her paper. Mama? Olivia turned to her. Yeah, baby. Does this mean we get a bigger kitchen? Olivia laughed. Not the polite kind. Not the tired kind. The real kind. The kind that starts in your stomach and fills the whole room. The kind Olivia hadn't made in months. Maybe years. She pulled Nyla onto her lap and pressed her face into the top of her head. Baby, we're gonna get our own kitchen. Nyla grinned. Can I pick the color? You can pick every color. Grant Caldwell sat at that wobbly kitchen table in that tiny apartment, holding an empty cartoon cup. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about spreadsheets or timelines or profit margins. He was watching a mother hold her daughter. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that he'd made the right call. But here's the thing about Olivia's story. It didn't end at that kitchen table. Not even close. What happened next didn't just change her life. It rippled outward, through her neighborhood, her community, and eventually through an entire city. Olivia started culinary school 2 weeks later. First day, front row, notebook open. The same spiral notebook she'd been carrying in her apron for years. Except now, it sat on a real desk in a real classroom. She was the oldest student in her cohort by 6 years. She didn't care. She stayed late after every class, practiced knife cuts until her hands cramped, called Janelle after her first successful souffle, screaming into the phone like she'd won the lottery. It rose, Janelle. It actually rose. Girl, I don't even know what that means, but I'm proud of you. Some nights were harder. The coursework was intense. There were moments she sat in the parking lot after class, exhausted, wondering if she was crazy. If a 28-year-old single mom from Frasier really belonged in a culinary program alongside kids who'd been staging in restaurants since high school. Then she'd open her notebook, see Nyla's little note tucked between the pages. "You can do it, Mama," in wobbly purple crayon. And she'd go back inside. Nyla was thriving too. The summer art program Olivia could never afford, paid for. Nyla went every day. She made friends. She painted. She laughed the way kids are supposed to laugh, loud and free and for no reason. She painted a mural in class, a woman holding a star-shaped pancake, standing in front of a big kitchen with yellow walls. The teacher asked who it was. "That's my mama," Nyla said. "She's going to have her own restaurant." The mural hung in their new apartment, a 2-bedroom in a safer part of Frasier, covered by the stipend. Nyla had her own room for the first time in her life. She picked the wall color herself. Purple, obviously. But Grant Caldwell wasn't just investing in Olivia. He was paying attention to where she came from. After visiting Frasier, after talking to the barber, Mrs. Coleman, Pastor Moore, he saw something most investors never bother to see. He saw a neighborhood full of people with talent, drive, and zero access to opportunity. So he did something about it. Through the Caldwell Foundation, he established a micro-grant program specifically for Frasier residents. Culinary careers, hospitality, small business startups. The grants covered training, equipment, and first-year operating costs. Pastor Timothy Moore's church became the community hub for applications. Every Tuesday night, the church basement filled with people filling out forms, asking questions, daring to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone was finally paying attention. And the very first grant recipient? Janelle Davis, Olivia's best friend. The woman who covered her tables the night of the storm without hesitation. Janelle used the grant to launch a catering business out of her cousin's commercial kitchen. Within 6 months, she was booked every weekend. Then the news got out. A Memphis TV station ran a feature segment, "Fired for Kindness: How One Waitress Changed a Community." The reporter asked Olivia a simple question. "Why did you do it?" Olivia shrugged, smiled a little. "I just didn't want her to be alone." That clip went everywhere. Local news, social media, shared thousands of times. People who'd never heard of Frasier were suddenly talking about it, talking about Olivia, talking about what happens when someone actually stops and helps. And the Briar Patch? Derek Swanson was quietly let go by the diner's owner after the story aired. No press conference, no drama, just a locked office and a forwarded final paycheck. The new management reached out to Olivia, apologized, asked if she'd consider coming back. She was gracious. She was kind, because that's who she was. But she said no. "Thank you, really, but I've got somewhere else to be now." 18 months later, Brooks and Bloom opened at the River Bluff Project. Southern comfort food, original recipes, every single dish from that spiral notebook. The signature item on the menu? Peach cobbler with brown butter and vanilla bean. And the first customer to be seated on opening night? At the corner table by the window, with a reserved sign and a single white rose, was Eleanor Caldwell. She ordered the cobbler. She took one bite, and she cried. And then, almost exactly 2 years after the night that changed everything, it happened again. A stormy evening, late fall. Memphis rain doing what Memphis rain does, showing up uninvited and refusing to leave. Brooks and Bloom was winding down for the night. The last few tables were finishing dessert. Soft music played through the speakers. The kitchen was starting to close. Olivia was wiping down the counter when the front door swung open. A young woman stumbled in. College age, soaked from head to toe. Mascara running. Eyes red. She stood in the doorway, dripping onto the hard wood, looking like the world had chewed her up and spit her out. Her car had broken down 3 blocks away. Her phone was dead. She didn't know anyone in the neighborhood. She was shivering and about 2 seconds from falling apart. Nobody had to tell Olivia what to do. She was already moving. She brought a clean towel, a bowl of soup, smoked tomato bisque, still warm from the last batch, a cup of hot tea. She sat the girl down at the counter and pulled up a stool beside her. "Take your time. You're safe in here." She called a tow truck for the girl's car, paid for it herself, didn't mention it, didn't make a thing out of it. That was just Tuesday at Brooks and Bloom. Because behind the register, taped to the wall in Olivia's handwriting, was a small sign that had been there since opening day. If you need a warm meal and can't pay, you're still welcome here. It wasn't a marketing move. It wasn't for Instagram. It was policy. Quiet, simple, non-negotiable. Nyla helped out at the restaurant on weekends now. 8 years old. Big personality. She bussed tables and snuck extra bread to the customers she liked, which was all of them. That night, she brought the college student a slice of peach cobbler. On top, drawn in whipped cream, was a star. The girl looked at it, then at Nyla. "What's the star for?" Nyla shrugged. "My mama says everyone's a star. Sometimes you just need someone to remind you." And Eleanor? Eleanor came to Brooks and Bloom every Sunday, without fail. She and Olivia sat together after the lunch rush, drinking tea, talking about everything and nothing. Eleanor called Olivia the daughter I always wanted. Olivia called her Miss Ellie. At the end of the night, Olivia locked up. She stood in the doorway for a moment, looking back at the warm glow inside, the photos on the walls, the plaque by the entrance, the tables where strangers became family. She reached into her bag and touched the notebook. Same notebook, same worn cover, same handwriting. New chapter. She stepped into the rain, smiling. And that's where we leave Olivia Brooks. Not at rock bottom, not at the peak, just moving forward, the way she always has. A woman who got fired for doing the right thing, who turned down money she desperately needed because it didn't sit right with her soul, who drove a stranger through a flood in a car that barely ran and never once asked what was in it for her. So let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest in the comments. If you were in Olivia's shoes that night, broke, one paycheck from losing everything, would you have walked out that door? Bro, fired for saving somebody's life. And she said no to the money. Like, imagine that's you. You're broke, you got nothing, and you still choose kindness. That hits different. So smash that like button, share this, subscribe, and tell me, would you have walked out that door?